Of the day, the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. The time now is 1:33. Welcome to everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience and for accommodating the Zoom platform while we maintain social distancing mandates. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Thursday, February 10, 2022, and again on Tuesday, February 15, and today is Thursday, February 17. The bill we'll be hearing this afternoon, we'll begin with Bill 247-36 COR, introduced by Senator Jim Moylan, co-sponsored by myself, Senator Agustin, and Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Chris Dueñas. An act to amend Section 53101D and 53102 of Chapter 53, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, and to add a new Section 53109 to Chapter 53, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to transferring the authority of the Guam Able Savings Program from the Department of Revenue and Taxation to the Department of Administration, and to authorize the governor to identify and transfer up to $250,000 from the general fund to implement the program. The Zoom meeting is hosted by my staff and we mute all Zoom participants until called upon. Members of the committee and or non-committee members will be allowed to pose a question to an individual testifying. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by myself before speaking and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Questions and testimonies shall be confined to the substance or the nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the virtual public hearing. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the hearing. Participants must be visible at all times and not engage in any other activity during the hearing. Other than if you're having a drink, then please have a drink. If you're having a snack, have a snack. Just hoping you're just not having a full meal. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me. We have the author of the bill, Senator Moylan is here. We have Senator Chris Dueñas. We have Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator ANNOTATED, and Senator Tony ADDA. We also have my former colleague, Senator Dennis Rodriguez is also here. And we'd like to recognize, we have Michelle Santos, Deputy Director of Department of Revenue. Oh, no, wait.
She's the Banking Insurance Commissioner.
Banking and Insurance Commissioner. Hi, Michelle. And we also have Jermaine Alerta here, the Executive Director of the Guam Developmental Disability Council. And we have Mr. Edward Burns, the Director of Department of Administration. We will begin with Senator Moylan. If you could give your opening statement, and then we can move on with testimony from the folks that have joined us this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel and directors here as well, and former Senator Dennis Rodriguez for participating today. Just some brief remarks. Basically, we're amending the existing law, Public Law 34-144, which is about Guam achieving a better life experience. That's what we call ABLE, the ABLE Act. So that's where the abbreviations come from. Little history on this. It was enacted by Governor Cabo back in December of 2018, which established the law 34-144 for creating the Guam ABLE Savings Program Act. And the measure was introduced by our Senator Dennis Rodriguez, Jr., and co-sponsored by you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. Now, what this is a local plan that mirrors the federal program, which is the Achieving a Better Life Experience, the ABLE Act of 2014. So what is the ABLE Act Savings Program? Well, it allows individuals and families to save private funds through qualified tax-exempt savings program to support individuals with disability. Now, the ABLE accounts are bank accounts, and that allows people with special needs to save money without jeopardizing their disability benefits. Money saved in a traditional bank account counts against the ability to qualify for the disability benefits. So the federal did it, and we localized it through the support of Senator Rodriguez and Senator San Agustin, and enacted into law. And it's basically, the account comes from the federal government, but they established and to be established and managed at each state and territory level. So that's why this came about. So Public Law 34-144 authorizes the Department of Revenue and Taxation, DRT, to establish the Guam Able Savings Program. Now, when we recently met up with or discussed with DRT, so it's asking them how's it going with the ABLE program, and we received a very clear, precise letter back, and it was very helpful to explain what's needed to move this forward. And there was three basic points on the first section that DRT through Michelle Santos here had informed us. First off, they really need money to do this. And why do they need appropriation to do the ABLE program? Because they have to bring about three things to make it happen. They have to engage a consultant service to assist in the launching of this program. That's one. They have to engage a fund program manager to be hired for this program. That's two. And they also had to provide funds for the associated startup administration fees overhead. You know, when you run it, it's costly. So that's the three things they need the funding for in order to make the ABLE program happen. So nobody was really delayed in getting this started or anything. It's just a matter of what else they need to get it running. So DRT also noted some conflicts with them administering or being the director of this plan, the ABLE plan, because DRT, as Mrs. Santos was explaining here, they're responsible to regulate banks. And then if they have to regulate banks, then they're going to go to the bank and ask for solicit for an RFP to start this program. There's a conflict. So that's how they saw it, which is very, very helpful. So that's how we came about with this bill, with this measure 24736. It addresses the three things that is needed, and it provides a funding amount. It authorizes the governor to identify and transfer above the authority of the Public Law 3654, our budget, up to $250,000 from the general fund or a special fund for those three items that DRT has explained to us. And then it also changes the administration of the ABLE program from DRT to the Department of Administration, so removing the conflict portion of this. So I think the bill then addresses DRT's issues. And then it also has a start date to get this program off and running. It will be October 1st, 2022, when people can actually put in their first monies into the account to make that available. So, Mr. Chair, I'm looking forward to a good discussion. I'm glad we have a fantastic panel with us today, and let's see how we can go forward with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Senator Moylan. I'd like to ask my colleague, my brother Dennis here to be able to speak. He was the author of the original bill, and look forward for his comments. Senator Dennis, please, sir.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you and to the other senators. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in favor of this measure. I want to thank, of course, Senator Moylan for pursuing this effort. As you know, Mr. Chairman, this was a measure that we got passed during the last month of that term, the 34th Guam legislature. And so I thank you, for putting this out in the forefront, Senator Moylan. I think it's a very important initiative to help a large segment of our community. And so really the bill, your bill is straightforward. It provides the tools. It has some flexibility to give to the government in trying to get this implemented. Just a little bit of history, though. When we introduced this bill on the 34th, this was introduced early on in the term. As you can see, I think it was bill in the 40s, and it was numbered in the 40s. And so we worked with the administration at that time at DRT. And so they were supportive of this. I think as indication also on the fiscal note that was provided on the original bill, you saw that they didn't highlight a need for additional revenue to stand this program up. As a matter of fact, I believe there was a mention that in the creation of this program, that perhaps the fees associated with setting up this program could be used to kind of offset what needs to be done to implement this. But be it as it may, that was what it was at that time. And if this is the position and the way forward to get this implemented, I wholeheartedly support it, and ask the senators there to please consider supporting this so that we can finally get this Guam Able Act implemented. So, Sadus Maasi, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Moylan, thank you very much again.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. I will now ask Ms. Michelle Santos, the Banking Insurance Commissioner. Ma'am, do you have any good comments to give on this, or any comments to give on this bill?
Yes, thank you, Senator. First of all, I want to apologize to my colleague, Edward Byrne, because I did not discuss this with him. I was hoping he would be at one of the meetings Senator Moylan called, but he wasn't. And, I don't want to surprise anybody or throw anything at them without, discussing it with him. So I apologize for that, Edward. The other thing is, I did not look at the fiscal note from the first time it was passed. So I didn't know what, the previous administration agreed to, or, what the thought was behind the, behind the 250,000. I don't know if that figure came from me, but I did say there would be some startup costs. And so if the senators feel okay in giving it, that's fine. It would be good if, we had some money to back it up. But my only concern, we'd be happy to do it. It's just, we feel conflicted because we regulate banks. So that was one of the, stronger issues. And we did start to do some work on it and start looking for vendors. We did make some contacts, and then I've been trying to get with Jermaine, but my Zoom was not working, so we couldn't, and then I went off island. So, we'd be glad to help in any way possible. We just don't want to be conflicted if we have to, discipline or whatever the case may be, but we'd be glad to help it anyway. Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Santos. Mr. Jermaine Alerta, sir, Executive Director of the Guam Developmental Disability Council. Sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and senators who are on today, and also to Mr. Byrne and Michelle. Thank you so much. I did submit written testimony just before the hearing. Sorry, it was so late, but I'll just go ahead and read from it, if that's okay, Senator San Agustin. Day, my name is Jermaine Alerton. I currently serve as the Executive Director of the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council. I would first like to provide some background about the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council and DD councils generally. The GDDC is one of 56 state and territorial DD councils throughout the United States. DD councils are part of the Developmental Disabilities Network as outlined by the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act amendments of 2000. The DD Network works independently through federal funding by the Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities under the leadership of the Administration for Community Living in the Department of Health and Human Services. Councils are made up of voluntary members appointed by the governor of the respective state or territory. By law, the majority of members must have a developmental disability or be a family member to a person with a developmental disability. The DD councils focus on creating programs and advocating policy that empower individuals with developmental disabilities and allows them to participate as an equal member of society. Councils work to create an environment of self-sufficiency, self-determination, inclusion, and acceptance. Councils also play a critical role in quality assurance and as innovators in the development of community programs and solutions. Before I continue, I must state that for the purpose of participating in discussion involving legislation, DD councils are prohibited from expressing any official positions either in support of or in opposition to legislation. Part of the role of councils is to just inform and educate policymakers and other stakeholders on relevant topics when called upon. In reference to the ABLE Act, Achieving a Better Life Experience, it became law in December 19, 2014. The law aims to ease financial strains faced by individuals with disabilities by making tax-free savings accounts available to cover qualified disability expenses. Individuals with disabilities and their families depend on a wide variety of public assistance benefits for income, healthcare, food, and housing assistance, just to name a few. Eligibility for these public assistance benefits require meeting an income threshold, and to maintain eligibility for these benefits, individuals must meet but not surpass that threshold. The ABLE Act recognizes the extra and significant costs of living with a disability, including costs related to accessible housing and transportation, education, employment training and support, personal assistance services, assistive technology, and healthcare not covered by insurance, Medicaid or Medicare. Eligible individuals and their families are allowed to establish ABLE savings accounts that will largely not affect their eligibility for Medicaid, supplemental security income, and means-tested programs such as free application for student aid, FAFSA, housing and rental assistance from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits, SNAP benefits. Currently, 39 states and the District of Columbia operate ABLE accounts. In a review of both Public Law 34-144, which created the Guam ABLE Savings Program, and Bill number 247-36 COR, underscores the importance of making the Guam ABLE Savings Program available to qualified individuals with disabilities in Guam and their families. The GDDC, the Guam Developmental Disabilities Council, takes no position about under which government entity the Guam ABLE Savings Program should be administered. However, the Council appreciates the attention being paid to this important matter and looks forward to seeing the program come to fruition and made available to hundreds of individuals with disabilities and their families, and we stand ready to support in however way possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jermaine. Appreciate it. Mr. Byrne, Edward Byrne, would you like to speak on the bill, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for allowing us to speak and address this bill. It is obviously something that we should do on Guam. And Department of Administration is happy to step up and fill the gap that happened since, as Senator Rodriguez spoke about, this was passed in several legislatures previous. Department of Administration has taken on a number of duties lately, not traditionally associated with the Department of Administration, but we have put together a center here of people who are now skilled in helping people, especially people that are financially challenged. And we look forward to, with the help of my colleagues, and I'm very grateful for the offer of help from Mr. Alerta and Mrs. Santos, with the help of my colleagues to implementing this program. I think perhaps the Department of Administration should have a new motto. It's coined by someone much more famous than me, but you know, the difficult we do at once, the impossible takes a little longer. We're going to, as soon as this law is passed, we're going to set about making sure that we can bring it about. From research that we've done so far, we would have to follow the rules of the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board for the accounts that are established for this particular purpose. But we would make contact with the ABLE National Resource Center, which actually has a very useful website that details the rules and how to achieve these particular accounts, and actually identifies which states and territories currently have them. And from what I can see, we would be the first territory to implement this type of account. So far as funding is concerned, certainly funding is going to be needed, and we absolutely appreciate the fact that the administrative costs for this program would come from some source. I do have some kind of some questions about the source, and I think I heard Senator Moylan confirm earlier that the transfer authority given to the governor under this proposed legislation would be in addition to the transfer authority that she currently has under the budget law. The fiscal note noted that it would be possible to transfer money from a special fund, but it pointed out that there are some difficulties with doing this, that under 5 GCA 4103.1, you would have to transfer the money back to the special fund within 60 days. And I'm not sure whether it was intended that this legislation would supersede 5 GCA or not. So it would certainly be helpful if we could get some clarification on that. The bill has a date to start no later than October 1st, 2022, and we believe we can meet that date. It would be our intention to, similar to the way that Mrs. Santos talked about the approach that DRT initiated, we would seek vendors who would be able to perform this, both from a consultant point of view and from a maintenance point of view. And we don't anticipate any difficulty with doing this because we already have 529 accounts in the territory. So we have a model to follow. So that said, we're, Department of Administration is happy to move this along and to be able to be part of this implementing this legislation.
If I could ask a question, Senator.
You want to ask a question in reference to what, Ms. Santos?
I just want to know how many participants Jermaine thinks we would have.
All right, Jermaine, go ahead. Go ahead and answer the question, and then we'll move along.
Yeah, Michelle, I wouldn't be able to give you a number with that. We'd have to just work on seeing. It's not an issue that comes up often, at least in the past couple of years, with any of our council members that we work with. But it is something that comes up on a national conversation quite often. And I know that the law was currently on the books here in Guam, so it was something worth looking into. I couldn't give you a number only because we don't know what the eligibility requirements would be with regards to the program. So I can't give you a definite number.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jermaine. Thank you, Ms. Santos. Senator Dueñas, do you have any questions for the panel that have given testimony?
I don't, Mr. Chairman, and just nice to see our good friend, Senator Rodriguez here, and I'll just continue to listen. I know that when I was approached by Senator Moylan to look at this, pretty much everything he outlined, I was aware of. So I'd just like to continue to listen to the executive branch here and the interaction as we move forward. So thank you for the opportunity to just basically say hello to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Amanda Shelton, do you have any comments as a co-sponsor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of the bill. I appreciate the hearing today and the work that Senator Moylan has done to collaborate with these agencies in our executive branch of government to ensure that this is a program that we can provide to our people, our individuals with disabilities and their families who have been asking. We know that we've been approached here in the legislature, I think in the last term, with some concerns about this account. And so if this is something that is doable, and I'm glad to hear from DOA that they have the confidence to be able to do this. And we know that this bill offers the appropriation to provide the resource for them, then I hope that we can move this bill expeditiously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. Senator Tony Adda, do you have anything you would like to comment on the bill? Or
thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Byrne and Mrs. Santos, thank you for being here today and providing testimony. It's nice to see folks from the administration down here helping us out with their testimonies. Mrs. Santos, just a question perhaps for you. Can individuals open and maintain ABLE accounts without the program created by Public Law 134-144?
I don't believe so. I believe the program has to be set up for them to participate.
Okay, so we need to have the program in place in order to have the individuals participate.
Yes.
And the amount or the number of individuals, if we have a low number, I mean, is it going to be beneficial regardless of the numbers of participants into the program, or are we going to be utilizing more resources for a lower number of individuals versus?
I believe it would be beneficial to the participant. I don't think it would matter to us administering the program. I believe the purpose of the program is to help the disabled. And I believe that is the main focus, and it wouldn't matter on the number
of participants.
Or participants, yes.
Okay, that's great to hear.
The banking facilities or financial institutions that work on this program, they have that in mind, and they accommodate it.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, that's the only questions I had. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Senator Adda. Senator Tello, did you have any comments you want to make? And then you'll be followed by Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you everyone for being here. Good to see you, Michelle. It's been a while. And Director Burns. So the cost that it's going to incur, the $250,000, is that, Mr. Burns, something that you've already assessed? I mean, what will this actually pay for, the $250,000?
No, Senator, we haven't already assessed it. It's in the bill. I think I tried to address the issue in my remarks that I don't know what the cost is at this moment, but I would expect to use funds up to, I mean, I certainly wouldn't use funds unnecessarily, up to $250,000 to engage a consultant and an operator for this particular program. Okay.
The other question, I'm glad you mentioned about the special funds, because even though the bill says, to utilize special funds, the language in this legislation does not actually, notwithstanding or even incorporate language to remove that. So I'm glad you mentioned that about the special funds. And I really would rather not use any kind of special funds. I mean, we've been ridiculed for going into the Guam Highway Fund, for instance, and utilizing money there when it's supposed to be meant for, those special funds are meant for a reason. And I'd hate for us to start going into special funds. Do you think that the governor will still be able to find the $250,000 in this legislation without touching any special funds in her transfer authority?
It's certainly nice to have the flexibility of one or the other. I would expect that the process would be to look at the general fund first, even if eventually a special fund was authorized. And as I mentioned, you're right, it doesn't have the notwithstanding language in. And so we would have to determine whether, in fact, you could or couldn't use a special fund. So certainly the simpler way would be to use a general fund, unless, and you've addressed this in prior legislation, a special fund loses its purpose, but still has funds in, then that might be a possible candidate.
Yeah, especially if we're trailing substantially lower than what was projected in revenues for special funds. That's a huge red flag. I mean, we might show the surplus in the general fund, but the special funds are trailing a whole different story. So it's important that, I have no objection. I think Senator Rodriguez was on point when creating this legislation. knowing the other jurisdictions or other states have also implemented this program, about 21, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it was in there, doing my research on that. About 21 states been a part of this. And I think that more information is definitely needed to see if this is viable, but by the transferring over from Rev and Tax to Department of Administration, hearing from you, Mr. Burns, with all the 50 million things that you have under your belt, that you're able to take this on, I appreciate it, especially for those with disabilities. And it's important to assist them in any way we can. Thank you, Jermaine, for being here and testifying in favor, for the bill. But I hope that we do this responsibly before moving into anything that's not actually going to be beneficial. And that means, just looking at other alternatives to assist those with disabilities that are a better viable source. So I thank you so much for being here to testify. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Teller. Senator Brown, do you have any comments or questions you'd like to pose to the participants?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hate to rain on the party a little bit. I don't have an issue with the concept of what's being proposed, but the funding source is of concern to me, and the lack of information in terms of how many participants we may potentially be dealing with. It's pretty hard to make decisions when you don't have that available. And I think before this bill moves forward to the floor, I hope we have an idea of exactly how many participants we're talking about. No one's going to argue about the need to help members in our community who are disabled. We're talking essentially about having them set up savings accounts. And yet we need to put, right now, I don't know where the arbitrary figure came. Can anyone give us an answer where we came up with $250,000? And then on top of that, now we have to hire a program manager to manage these savings accounts for the number of unknown participants. What exactly is involved in that? And are there other resources available in our government to assist? I mean, my goodness, you might as well divide up the 250 and give it to them directly to put it in their savings account. I don't mind the idea, Mr. Chair, but again, when we look at these type of appropriations, it's a roll of the dice. If there's money sitting in the general fund that we haven't appropriated already, and then if it hasn't, let's raid the special accounts and say we're doing good things for disability. I just want some financial responsibility in this government of how we address appropriations. And I'm also concerned, Mr. Chair, to what degree the government is getting involved in the daily lives of people. I don't mind providing the support. I don't know, gosh, this must be Republican agenda here in what I'm saying, but to what degree does the government get involved that we have to hire a manager to oversee this? It's not that complicated, even whether, able-bodied to even set up a savings account. Does it require this degree of financing and this degree of a program manager has to be hired to oversee this? I'm not familiar with the ABLE program. Maybe we need to be enlightened. It would be helpful to get this type of information before we're put before a public hearing to address issues like this. But those are the questions that I have. If the sponsor or anyone else can come forth to enlighten me, because I'll tell you, I don't profess to the idea that money is falling from the sky these days, even though that's what I hear and read, that all is well. But if it's a solid source of funding, then let's have that. When we play these kind of shell games here with appropriations, that wherever it comes from, and if you don't get the money, then you're not supporting the disabled community. I don't think that's responsible financial management of the people's resources. And then again, I don't know what the extensive involvement is in this process of these savings accounts that we have to hire a program manager to manage the program. Are there other resources that are available in our agencies that assist with our disabled community that can address this? Or can we provide them a little more resource to help facilitate? Because I don't think this is a full-time job. I mean, those of us that have managed department and agencies, let's not kid ourselves. This would not be a full-time job. And, I'm even a little concerned because, these are my fellow Republican colleagues that profess financial responsibility in the government. So no argument about assisting the disabled community. But I got to question this. This is just jumping out at me. So does the sponsor or anyone else can publicly account for what's being proposed in this bill when we don't even know the number of potential participants that are going to be involved in this program? This is growing government. Does anybody have an answer?
I don't know. I don't know if the sponsor would like to respond to you. If not, we'll just move along.
Well, whether they don't, I just, again, I have to bring this up. I think these are practical questions. There are a lot of people that are unemployed in our community. There are all these challenges that we talk about, and yet we're so free with this. And I would like to know, is there other supports, resources currently exist in our government for persons with disabilities that we can provide a little more support so that they can actually oversee this program? Because I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was that much involved in once you go to a bank and set up a savings account. And then unless they have custodians, unless the public defender, for example, is a custodian because a person with disability has no one else, a family member to oversee or assist them, who is it in the government we're going to be managing savings accounts now? So does anyone have an answer for myself or the general public that may be listening in on this? Where is the information to answer these very basic questions? Because to me, they're very basic questions. If this were for anything else, I think we'd be right on top of it in the very same way.
Okay, Senator Brown, I turn back to the sponsor. He tried to answer the initial question, and if we allow him, we can move forward. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing just for the information of the bill from those who want to come out and testify for or against. Maybe some of these discussions would have been really helpful if I had this one-on-one with my fellow colleagues to further explain this. But if this is going to be a debate, like we're having a session floor, I don't think it's fair for the guest on this to go through this. This is an existing federal program. This is an existing law. We're just making some adjustments on how we can help implement this. How many people will participate? Yeah, you got to advertise it. The more people that know about the program and the benefits, it will be a wonderful thing to do. But you need some startup costs, and we're talking up to. Mr. Byrne was pretty good on that. Up to $250,000. Mr. Byrne may only need $20,000. He doesn't know, but he knows he's not going to go up to. If he doesn't need it, he doesn't need it. Where it comes from is called flexibility. The governor has transfer authority that our public law with our budget says we gave her transfer authority. This one says it doesn't interfere with that transfer authority because she already lost a certain percentage of it when this body reduced it through the legislation when we passed the budget. It made it very flexible for the governor to get this $250,000 up to. A lot of the questions that are asked, it's in the original law. I'm not adjusting anything else in that law. Just these three things to add it, which are in the original law for the purpose of implementing it. We have two directors here that are trying to get this going for the people of Guam. And I'd rather we had this discussion, or if we want to debate about it, let's have it on session floor and move this bill forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I'm not here to debate. I probably am the oldest member of the Guam legislature that has served in this legislature that's on this panel. So I don't need an education with regards to my role at a public hearings, considering the fact I attend most public hearings. It's also the process under which we as members get information on the legislation that's being proposed so that hopefully when we're in the floor of the legislature, we're informed and the public is informed with regards to legislation that's being brought forth. And the last time I checked, when you have language in a bill that's underlined, I'm of the assumption that that's new language that's being added to an existing statute. So unless there's something different in my education here in the Guam legislature, I'm assuming this is new language, the appropriation of funding up to $250,000 from some source unknown in the general fund, from some source unknown in special funds. And then it requires, what's been added to my understanding is a creation of a program manager for the purposes of managing the Guam Able Savings Program. And yet I have heard no specific information being provided as to what exactly is involved in this program. And does it need a full-time manager to oversee it? We have no idea what would be involved in the financial cost of operating or paying for the salary if this is an additional position that's being created. I'm assuming it's a new position because I'm not aware of a program manager for the Guam Able Savings Account. So I simply bring this up because we should be doing responsible legislation, and we should be able to ask questions to the very specific questions that I'm asking, that this bill is being presented to us and the public. So I'm not going to belabor it, Mr. Chairman, but I think as where we're at and where we're going, we need to be more responsible with how we address these funds. We should have more specific information at this juncture. And yes, maybe there are others we're not aware of, but I'm sure the disability community, the particular agencies that assist have a general idea, at least for those that have come forth already, who may be eligible to participate in this program, to give us a general idea on what we may be spending $250,000 of the people's money to manage. So I think in all fairness, I think these are very fair questions to be asking with regards to the appropriation of public funds. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Your comments are so noted, Senator Brown. We have no one else to testify. I would ask the author of the bill to make the closing, then I'll close up with a couple of statements and we'll be wrapped up. Senator Moylan, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the panel. I appreciate the cooperation you have working together and getting this program started. Looking forward to it. Moving to session floor. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moylan, and for the committee and for the people of Guam. There'll be appropriate amendments made as been stated and requested by this public hearing. It'll be germane to the bill, not to Jermaine or Lerda, but germane to the bill. I just thought I tease Jermaine out there. But we'll take the necessary steps. I'll be working with the author and with Department of Revenue and Tax and Administration so we can squeeze down exactly the amounts that we're identifying. And with that, I'd ask that if anyone would like to submit any testimony, please submit it to the mailroom of the Guam legislature or through email at Senator Joe S. Augustine at gmail.com. And again, I want to thank everyone for attending this virtual public hearing and for providing feedback and suggestions. This public hearing is now adjourned. The time now is 2:15. Jesus Masi, please be safe. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and maintain your social distancing. We will take a quick recess for a couple minutes, and then we will start up with Bill 220-36. Thank you. Half a day and good afternoon. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. The time now is 2:24. Welcome to everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience and for accommodating this Zoom platform while we maintain the social distancing mandates. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Thursday, February 10, and then on Tuesday, February 15. Today is February 17, and the time is 2:24. The bill we'll be entertaining this afternoon is Bill 220-36 LS, introduced by Senator Amanda Shelton, co-sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, Senator Jim Moylan. An act to add a new section 26212 to Article 2 of Chapter 26, Title 11, and to add a new subsection to Section 13101 of Article 13.1, Chapter 1, Title 5, all of Guam Code annotated relative to funding the compensation of adjudicated claims of the greatest generation of Guam for the atrocities suffered during the World War II occupation of Guam. The rules of conduct: this Zoom is hosted by my staff and will mute all Zoom participants until called upon. Members of the committee and or non-committee members will be allowed to pose a question to an individual testifying. Individual testifying shall first be recognized by me before speaking and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the virtual public hearing. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the hearing. Participants must be visible at all times and not engage in any activity during the hearing. If you need to take a drink, please feel free to do so. And you're having a snack, as long as you're not having a full meal. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. I'd like to thank my colleagues for attending this afternoon hearing. We'll begin with the author of the bill, Senator Amanda Shelton. We have, as I go across my screen, I see Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Tello Tadigui, Madam Speaker Therese Terlai, Senator Chris Dueñas, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Tony ADDA. I have one participant, and that's Mr. Ronald Guan, that's here also. I'd ask now Senator Amanda Shelton if you can go ahead and give your opening statement, please, on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on the bill, and thank you also for hearing this bill today. Bill number 220-36 is an act to add a new section 26217 to Article 2 of Chapter 26, Title 11, and to add a new subsection G to Section 13.101 of Article 13.1, Chapter 1, Title 5, all of Guam Code annotated relative to funding the compensation of adjudicated claims of the greatest generation of Guam for the atrocities suffered during the World War II occupation of Guam. I'd like to thank my co-sponsors, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes and Senator James C. Moylan, for their support of this measure. We made tremendous progress over the last few years for war claims, but we know that there's still so much work to do. And Bill 220-36 offers a method to pay every Guam World War II war claimant, regardless of date of death and who has yet to be awarded a war claim. Bill 220 seeks to pay war claims in two ways: provides $75 million funded through the tax credit program and an additional $75 million from the Department of Administration to deposit $15 million each fiscal year for a 5-year period from Section 30 funds into the Guam War Claims Fund. The tax credit program will allow businesses to pay claimants directly and receive a dollar-for-dollar match for a tax credit from the government of Guam, swiftly issuing payments to claimants who have not already received a war claim. We've heard the calls from survivors and their families still seeking closure for this dark time in our island's history, and we know that this is the right thing to do. No amount of money can ever bring back our loved ones or erase their suffering, but we have the opportunity to provide a path forward to fulfill a promise to our survivors and to make them whole. So again, Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity for hearing this bill today, and I look forward to the discussion to help us move forward. So Maasi.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. I'd ask Senor Ronald Laguardia, I know you're here to testify, hopefully in for or against the bill. Sir.
Afarei, Senor. Si Maasi, no na yun na oportunidad talo. Tiput pa be pananabla gini na manatetendio public hearing todo tempo. Lo pidi perdung na library ni poni. Gi esen importante para I familia ko dan todo di siya ni mana fanyagi loki para ma-reconisa tot kumusya loki man mate jama masapi jama makastiga gi durante guerra. O na set si mota sa pudi fino itano. Jagini na na o zahon ng pabe sangan sa masnya 40 jana claro isinenteco impatana serbi I fino I manainata. I introduce myself primera tabi na claro hajizo si Rano Tenorio familia Labuto Laguardia Gaddi Ilaguardia na naan prefecto Zamoro Gimeste di masangan nigap na makwestiona na ti Zamoro Ilaguardia Zamoro Lagwa kumikiliknya artikulo para manguniguyan tat kumusinya talaza tekin patsinsulu para fasyana klasin artikulo para manguniguyan. Inya ihayad haji gaizu na lagwa. Lagwa hu, lagwa mo, pat lagwanya. Ihaji gaizu na lagwa, ilagwanya gaizu ilagwa. I-prefectu. Ilabutu, familian Tenorio, kita zonya, dan kita sinonnya. Igaddi, manginadi, Zamoro si tatao talo. Sa enigi pabina klor. Kini edzi ipamalo na ni komisyona iwistik sa wistik alemon. Enigi pabina klor. Matuzo pago pabe fantastigo sa husupoti na library ni poni hutuna hamzo na senador na in senik za in preba sa ane mafanyaw ko sinanaw di Febrero dia 20 May 1930 za matay de Agosto 2, 2006 60 años edad niya sinanaw ane matay lo ane manholomit sa panis Gimi 1941 11 años gui sinanaw. Agofasu todo e hafa masusedi zaguida loki masapit. Ane makpui gera gimi 1944 13 años kasi 14 años gui. Si tatao ane manolomit sa panis di 41 16 años si tatao ane makpui gera kasi sta 19 años si tatao. Siya dos man masapit man makastiga gi 2 años la mitad na tempo sa panis. Mala sa tanak klaro sa bulat ti humahasus ti na tempo masasangan na 4 años igera gini gi Guam ay 2 años la mitad Ane manholom sinanaw makastiga ni ADDA todo masapit kon todo si tatao. Sinanaw hapatitsui sa panis. Gifinakui gera hatungo fuminot sa panis sinanaw. Si tatahu matotsu gi runway gi hulu gi jatijan masapit di las 5 gi tamak hasta las 7 gi pupuengi para un puño na pugas. Un puño kumikilenya una na kana gitagini na pugas. Apes kakaji iman sa panis sana panyotsutsu. Pues etigi pabesangan na husupot ti manilu esta matay sinanaw gi 76 años gitatmat si tataw matay gi 66 hobin ifenatanya si tataw. Esta pago 97 si difunto tataw sinanaw 92 pago gwini na Domingo gi Febrero dia 20 cumpleaños niya. Ipuntok ko gini utana hagasa sinanaw Adiseya i 2016 na fetsa ni mautut Mata esta sinanaw sais onius antes de zuluhaga sa nananga esti para masya reconisa zon otsagi dididi. Sinanaw fiwa astoradio. Uno na historia ni asasangan na man panlahu para menyenggun. Ahohogi itselunya si Jesus atoibi tenorio tatan Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio. Sumeli dos años sa tatan Josh. Sinanaw akikiligi o otro kanay si Tselunya si Priscilla Tenorio tungka. Masapit sinanaw hali todo mantiyunya ni manlalahu gifihonnya mazutia gigi ang banda sa tisinya malangan manlahu batu gi zaman yenggun. Sinanaw ni ahohogi si Tselunya sus umutia hogi zu jatiana lala titali pago si Josh ti ifanagunya. Sa edzigi anaya sangangan yo sinanaw na storya. Apapatsadzu sa guija i mas ampo gimanelo todo. Za fiwa asangan storya put historia. Ni taimano man masapin naman aktog za kini ajanyaji man aktog yalom tano. Tisinya man mamatinas, tisinya mamaaso, sa manliin ni Japanese, za janggib za mahatmi talo lansonya. Si Tatao, Biu, Vicente, Atoibi, Tenorio, Guija Lancero, Tatao Biu. Anay lumalansu, manahaluma tori Japanese, za matsutsuli todo gilainya za frutas za niya. Iminalate niya na Chamorro, manhat sa dos na lansu, pikarunya, guaha on lansu, para siya pamilya, za ni famogonya, yung banda ni anak-anak, pes otro na lansu ni avocado zonia, pes manahalum it Japanese, za makokuniga niya guaka, todo manuk zanafa. Lo ipikarunya, za ni malate niya, gua dos lansonya, put paraw na fanlala ifamogonya. Eza sasangan, na put pabesopot di au sa para tranquilo hamni manelo pudi hinasunanao dan si Tatao ni apa matsogenya aneman makastiga 2 años na mitad na años giduran tinigera 2. Pesusupoti esti na like 22036 ni na parata na guaha dididi konsensya niya imana inata sa ni maniluta ni para masya patahat saji lapida ni haga sa diseya sinanaw ni para uwaha dididi recognition zan apas. Pesinafa mas dangkulo na si Diyos maasi Senator Amanda Shelton sa haga so atatijaw nesti utatijaw na unmentis tigi utumo na lay pues mensyona ha loki segundo magalahi Josh Tenorio na tanakabalis ipumalo ni man masapit dan mamakastiga ti para edza sinya i 2016 nasakkan. Kasi na mas tangkulo na si Diyos masino na yun esti na oportunidad zahu support ti esti na library ni Pony i 2220-36. Si Diyos masino todo samso.
Those Marcy, Senator Ronald. Senator Moylan, do you have any comments you'd like to make as a co-sponsor of the bill?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the authors introducing it. Looking forward to it moving forward, and I appreciate the testimonies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, do you have any comments or questions like to pose to the panel, Mr. Luana or anyone?
No, of course, I have no questions for Mr. Laguana. I support his testimony, and of course, I tried to make this type of an amendment on the war claims bill that we did pass, and it was not allowed by the chair at the time, and I was not able to get enough votes to overrule the chair. My questions, Mr. Chair, are of course regarding the funding source. We passed 2 bills stating a certain funding source, and the administration agreed, signed the bills. And then on the 3rd round, they came in with asking for an entirely different funding source, saying that the the first two bills, the funding source was not adequate or appropriate. This is a huge shift in how we're going to fund. And there's absolutely no one here from the administration, including the Department of Administration, who was just on for the last bills hearing, or the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. I think, you know, those are the issues that we need to hash out, not whether we need to include them, because of course I am in full support of including all of those who should have received war claims. But if we're going to put this money aside for 5 years, then let's get the fiscal people in here to show that we can actually do that, so that we don't give false hopes again. You know, I hate to see that. But I'm all in favor of the intent of the bill. I just think that we're having an appropriations hearing here, and we don't have the fiscal team. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The administration were invited for this hearing. Senator Chris Dueñas, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Well, Mr. Chair, sorry, if I may the administration submitted a fiscal note that says, you know, it says what the bill says, that the bill is going to take $30 million of revenue every year away from our current general fund sources. But that's all they've said. They haven't explained it at all. Neither has OFB. And OFB's fiscal note says even less. So yeah, I just thank you, Mr. Chair. And my apologies, Ms. Senator Dueñas.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Dueñas, sir.
Jesus Mazi, Mr. Chair, and of course, Madam Speaker, it's not only that, you know, gentlemen should be gentlemen and defer to our ladies, but also because you're the Speaker, I will always defer in that sense. But, you know, in all seriousness, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy that this is the way that we're doing this. To me, this is the proper way to have heard a program proposals such as this. I share in the Speaker's concerns that we don't have the administration present, and it looks as though the fiscal note is something that is simply reflective of, you know, what the legislation proposes to do without a discussion on the impact. So, Mr. Chairman, I would say that we're going to have to continue to get a firm position from the administration on this, because they will be the ones to execute a policy of this nature. And that has to be clear, so that we don't end up with a situation where we're pointing fingers at each other in terms of you passed a law, and so now we have to execute this. This is something you know, that is of such a magnitude, and a discussion that has to be brought forward on what does it mean in terms of you know, the other duties and responsibilities of the general fund. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been any efforts. Certainly there have been many efforts over the years, failed efforts to seek redress with regard to this on the federal level. But I want to put this on the record that the people of Guam, in executing the program that we did to include recently passed legislation, have proven, you know, that we were willing to step up and to basically acknowledge, you know, an acknowledgement that was forgone and forgiven, you know, beyond our powers and beyond our capabilities. But we at least wanted to bring some dignity to those, you know, of that generation that met the qualification under the program that was finally approved. I really, really hope that this legislature, as long with the administration and others, through our congressmen and everything else, regardless of the fact that this is an election year, we put differences aside and we push once again at the federal level to have this recognition made, because that's truly where it belongs. It's truly where it belongs. And I know that we have had this conversation now that we're using Section 30 money that is a federal remittance to Guam, but it's a federal remittance in recognition that, there is a duty and a due compensation to our people with regard to the sacrifice that our island gives to the nation in terms of being a forward deployed area in the part of the world that's dangerous to protect democracy and freedom. That's really what that Section 30 does a lot in terms of the remittances of those tax dollars to Guam, as a host community and as a proud host community. But that is something that, is used to take care of the operations of our government, to provide services to our people. And so in light of that, it truly is deserving of a proper federal recognition and monies outside of Section 30 that would be put forward for programs such as this going forward. Maybe even the beginning of this program, Mr. Chairman, is the reimbursement of the money that we put out, from the program that we administered. So those are my comments for now, Mr. Chairman, simply because of the impact. Certainly the intent is something that's been debated, but without true representation and from the administration, I'll have some difficulty on the movement forward. But I'm certainly know that the committee will continue to have hearings going forward, because I think that that's what's going to be required, Mr. Chairman. Those are my simple comments at this time. So just Mosley.
Yes, and thank you, Senator Dueñas. I'd like to remind my colleagues and the people of Guam that I did make a commitment to establishing drafting a resolution that all my colleagues will receive, is to ask the federal government to uphold to their commitment when they've forgiven the government of Japan from paying, and that they pay, and they're supposed to take care of us. And we're estimating, based on all our research, we're looking at approximately about $70 million. And if we can get that reimbursed to us and then ask for this additional funds to cover this, then we can put closure to this. Because, and you're right, the funding source, and I'm going to hear Senator Brown going to mention it, the number one, we shouldn't be paying it. The proper recognition for our survivors should be appropriately established from the federal government. And we'll move on from there. But I'll ask Senator Brown, we'll move on to my other colleagues, and then we'll continue to move forward on finding the funding, the true money that needs to come from the federal government. I honestly believe that. Senator Brown, do you have any comments?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think you already know what my comments are going to be. I just do not believe in any way, shape, or form that expecting the people of Guam, because ultimately, even in the draft of this legislation, I mean, the intent is the people of Guam are being expected to pay reparations. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how we have the victims of the war or the descendants of the victims of the war pay themselves for the suffering that was brought upon them. I know none of us here who are descendants of those that went through World War II not recognize the sacrifice and the suffering of our loved ones, even though certainly I myself am far younger. You know, I did not experience what my grandparents and my uncles and my aunts, who are my mom's older siblings, experienced. Those that are alive now are in their late 80s. But having served on the Guam War Reparations Commission and accompanied 3 of those war survivors to Washington, D.C. to testify on legislation, to ask for the very thing, Mr. Chair, you just mentioned, that they be compensated by the federal government for their suffering. I don't think that commission or those members, who unfortunately have since passed away, would have ever envisioned that they and their children and their grandchildren, and now in most cases, if not all of the 3 of them, their great-grandchildren, would be expected to pay reparations to them. There is no way in the world in our human capacity, Mr. Chair, that we are ever going to be able to have relieved the suffering of our loved ones that went through World War II. Because so many of them, so many that I worked with at the time who filed their claims with the commission at the time have passed away. We cannot absolve that pain. But for us now as members of the Guam legislature to ask our people, which is ultimately what this legislation is asking, it's asking our people to pay up to $70+ million out of their pockets to compensate themselves, to take money off the table that right now pays for law enforcement. And as we know, the lack thereof, the lack of the amount of resources and funding to provide for our police department that our people want to see. Our people now are imprisoned, Mr. Chair, in their own homes. Every time they have to lock their doors, their windows, their shutters, put up a fence, put up a security system, get another dog. Our people live in a community now, they're imprisoned, most of them, especially the elderly. Many of them who are war survivors that are still alive are imprisoned in their own homes because we do not have a safe community for them to live in. We have many demands in our educational system for our children that we cannot fund. Here, we're even looking at how can we get funds to assist our disabled to set up their own bank accounts. And we don't have money to do that. But now we're asking through this legislation, our people to provide $70 million of their own money to compensate themselves for their parents or grandparents that have since passed away. And granted, Mr. Chair, I don't think the suffering of my family is any less important than the suffering of any other Chamorro family that endured the war. Especially those that passed away and had to survive after the war with literally nothing, who lost their homes, who had children to feed. And we think now that they've passed away, our honor to them is to take the money from their grandchildren to pay for them that are no longer here. By all means, Mr. Chair, if this money was coming from the federal government, I would be right there in the line to say, yes, this is right and this is just. But I cannot support legislation that asks our own people to pay for their own compensation. Because I know my own grandfather who I knew. I cannot say for my grandmother. She passed away from illness 6 years after the war. I never got to meet her. We want to go our family, our names, our lineage. My grandmother, Maria Ignacio Perez, my grandfather, Sus Lujan Salas. All of us can say our familia that we come from. But to ask our own people, do you think if my grandfather would want his grandchildren or great-grandchildren to pay for his suffering? Because we say, oh, it's going to come out of business taxes? Who pays the business? Where does the money come from? It comes from the people. Also note, Mr. Chairman, the absence of the business community here. How do we interpret that? Doesn't sound like they're supporting this legislation because I don't see or hear them. Maybe there's testimony they provided. But if we want justice, we're not going to get justice taking the money off the table of our people. That is what I find most offensive. And I, more than anyone else, maybe next to Senator Frank Blas, who's worked with the survivors of the war, I find this reprehensible. I find this incredibly distasteful. To ask our people to pay their own money as victims of the war is wrong. It's morally wrong. If we're here getting the money from the federal government, I would be the first one. That's why with regards to the survivors that we most recently addressed in our last session, I opposed it because I do not believe our people should pay themselves or be asked to pay themselves. Otherwise, this is just politics. This is politics. This is, oh, let's just pay the money out and this is going to absolve the suffering of our people because we can finally close the, how do you close the chapter? We don't have the authority or the ability to do that. And then to ask our people is even more, I don't even know what to say about that. To ask our people, but yet business, We're going to take $70 million that we appropriate now for our government colleagues, that we will be in a few months wrestling what we can and cannot fund, and yet use this as an excuse so that we don't have to do it on the floor of the legislature on the budget when we're talking about providing for the basic needs of our people. We don't want to be faced with that. So let's do this in lieu of, we'll do the business privilege tax. We'll give them the credit and let them pay it through that. We have no clue what suffering is with regards to what our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents went through. But then to ask them, to ask their descendants to pay for that suffering and call it reparations? If the federal government wanted to pay it, I'm all for it. Be they alive or they passed away, which the bulk of them have passed away. Of course, they should not be penalized because of the natural course of life that they died because they couldn't wait 70+ years to get compensated. But my colleagues, when we venture down these roads to create this kind of legislation and tell our people we're doing something for them, we're not telling them the truth about what we're taking away from them. And unless, colleagues, you can tell me we got all the money to provide for our children's education, our well-being, our public safety out there in the community, then oh, why not? But this is not what this represents. We cannot absolve what has happened. And Mr. Chair, I'll tell you, I will support your resolution. Do I think Congress at this stage, when most of the members of Congress probably never served in the armed forces or even are alive at this age, have experienced the war, to have any compassion about what our people have been through, do I think there will be any success with that? If we couldn't do it with Congressman Wampet, we couldn't do it with General Blas, who lived through the war and became congressman. We couldn't do it with Congressman Underwood. And ultimately, we get the compromise with Congresswoman Berdalia that we're going to take it from Section 30 funds. If they couldn't do it, what makes us think a legislative resolution is going to change the reality? That the federal government continues to refuse to directly address compensation to our people, as they did for others. They did it for the Aleutian Islanders. They did it for the Japanese Americans, but they didn't do it for our people. So colleagues, I'm sorry, but I cannot support this. I think we have, yes, we have a moral obligation, but this is not the way to do it. And this is not the way to put the issue to rest when we're asking our own people that have suffered, our own people that continue to suffer, to pay their own compensation for their own loved ones that have gone through the war. So with that, I don't have any further comment, Mr. Chair, and obviously cannot support this bill. Thank you.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Tello, do you have any comments? And it'll probably be almost the same. Thank you, Senator Tello. Welcome.
Well, I don't know why you would say that, since I was the first one to introduce the bill to pay off the war claims. And then another bill was brought right after, 4 hours after I introduced the bill, then somebody else introduced the bill. But knowingly that the bill that I prepared was close to what was happening currently on paying off war claims by using Section 30 money, the same way they're being paid off right now. This is totally different though. This appropriation is totally different. And I'm still trying, Mr. Chair, something is important like this. First, I want to thank Mr. Laguana for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and testify. Because, other than you, we don't have the administration and we don't have the public here representing as well. I wonder how they all feel about using money that comes from BPT and not just Section 30 money. So I don't understand, the comment, Mr. Chair, that, I'm probably going to say the same. There are some things I agree with Senator Brown, totally agree with her. And this legislation that came out right away after we passed 230, I think, I can't remember what the name of the bill was, 230, I think it was. Oh yeah, it could be, because I was 229 or something, that passed. I don't understand how BBMR is coming up with 150 million. How did they calculate that? Are you taking both BPT, appropriating that money as well as Section 30 money, combining it together, making it $30 million? It's very difficult, for something as important as this bill, anything that addressed, not this bill, but any bill that addressed our greatest generation, those who suffered through the war. that it should at least have the courtesy of having the administration here, whether you have to subpoena them, Mr. Chair, or not. But right now, this is confusing on the fiscal note that was brought to us. I had tons of questions for Rev and Tax. The proposed tax credit applies to only BPT taxes and is assigned and negotiable. If the tax credits are negotiable, will it be reasonable that tax credits be applied to other taxes such as property tax, further negotiable to pay car registration, license fee, etc.? Bill 220 claims that the tax credit are fully negotiable. Can the tax credit be applied or reassigned by holders of tax credits? Can a claimant have it transferred? There are tons of questions, Mr. Chair, that need to be answered. And especially not just from the administration, but from the public. From the public. I think we should take an initiative, Mr. Chair, and do an outreach to bring more people to the table to discuss this bill, as well as the support of your resolution, which I was the first one that asked you, Mr. Chair, when you did this, when your proposal of introducing a resolution, that I be, be the first one as a co-sponsor of that. You saw me raise my hand for that. And I'm so for that. But I really think that we should do more than put out a bill, especially during election year, put out a bill such like this with no justification. Why 75 million, by the way? Why 75 million? Is there a number of how many people that will apply for this, or we're just putting a cap on that? That doesn't make any sense. If we're going to open it up to all the survivors' descendants, then we open it up to all of them. Where did 75 million come from? And now BB Mar is saying it's 150 million. Where did that come from? So I think we should make every effort to do an outreach, to bring people to the table. Listen to the public. Listen to individuals saying whether they feel they should get this money, that if their parents were alive today, they would want me to have this money. Or hear from the public that say, no, this money is not, I'm not entitled to this money. That time has come and gone for my parents to be able to take part or utilize any kind of funding that should have been awarded to them a long time ago. Let's hear from the public. Maybe someone else might come in and say, well, I'd rather see, like Senator Brown said, I'd rather see this money be spent toward my child's education, to the safety and welfare of the island, to our roads, to our schools. Because I think my parents who passed away, who was part of the war, who went through just devastating acts of cruelty from the war, that their parents would want their grandchildren to partake in the best and safety of their lives moving forward. So, Mr. Chair, I think that we should continue the discussion out in the public, continue it before moving something like this forward. Because I don't want to go out there and to make it look like this is a political ploy. Because that's exactly what happened when Madeline Berdallo had the opportunity to have those people who were alive at the time in 2008, I believe, to be paid by the federal government, not by taxpayer money, but by the federal government. But she hesitated, and within 2 hours made that decision on her own without bringing in the government, the governor or the legislature or the people of Guam. Should we take this opportunity? She had that opportunity, but didn't take it because she wanted to include the descendants. And that happened how many years ago, and how many people have died since? So please, Mr. Chair, consider an outreach program, consider the resolution that you have you're contemplating on putting together, which anything I can do, my office can do to help you move that forward, and continue the outreach to the community to get their feedback. Because I can tell you there will not be another World War III, because whatever war comes in front of us, the next war will be the last war. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tello. Senator ADDA, do you have any comments you'd like to make? And then I'm going to recess this hearing, and we'll come up another date and ask for the executive branch to appear, because I've heard my colleagues speak that, and even the author asked me that. And then we'll also ask the chamber and other business to participate, so what the impact would be. Senator ADDA.
No comments, Mr. Chair, just to thank Senor Laguana for coming out to testify on this important measure, and hope that we come to a happy medium to where we can be able to move this type of legislation forward, where we can all be proud of that, we were able to come together for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator ADDA. Senator Amanda, before I recess, would you like to comment anything? Ma'am?
Yes, Siduous Masi, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Mr. Laguana for being here. And I know we did receive some written testimony from families of war survivors. I want to thank them for sharing their stories and for reminding us to keep these memories alive and to continue fighting. Siduous Masi, Senor Laguana, for your time today. And I know there were some questions about the amount, the appropriation in this bill. And to be clear, the amount being appropriated is $150 million. That's why the fiscal note states $150 million. There are two sources to reach this number, and that is number one, $75 million from the Department of Administration to be deposited into the Guam War Claims Fund at $15 million every fiscal year. And then the other $75 million is through a tax credit program administered by the Department of Revenue and Taxation. And Mr. Chair, yes, I appreciate that you will recess this hearing so that we can get the folks from our agencies to come on to talk about fiscal impacts and to talk about the process that we are setting up in this bill, to have their input and any suggestions that may help us to strengthen this measure and to move it forward in the best possible way. And we know that no amount of money can ever bring our loved ones back or to erase their suffering. And it's not ideal that we are going to pay these amounts out from our government coffers, from whether it be Section 30 money or this tax credit program. But this is a path forward that we have, because there are still families, there are still survivors who are seeking this type of resolution, who will find peace and who will find closure from this program, from allowing us to pay these war claims. And so I thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And the way we got the $150 million figure is actually from research done before the federal legislation in 2006 from HR 1595, which told us the direct spending cost to pay every survivor would be about $180 million. And we know that from the local war claims program that we were paying out over the last couple of years, we paid about $30 million. And so the estimate is now $150 million. So that is the total appropriation again in the bill. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank you again for your time, for allowing us to hear this bill. And I hope that we will have folks from the administration join us when we come back from recess at a later date, so that we can continue to work toward this solution and compensation for our war survivors, regardless of their date of death. There are three categories that we are seeking to pay here. So it's for adjudicated claims for those who have missed the filing deadline. As you know, we've addressed that in other legislation earlier in the term. And it's also to pay survivors of compensable Guam decedents and claimants regardless of their date of death. And so this is something that we hear. We get the phone calls all the time, Mr. Chair. We meet people out in the community who are asking us to continue the fight for war claims. And this is a path forward for us. I ask my colleagues for their support, Mr. Chair, for your support to help us move this forward with all of the discussion, the dialogue that we need from the administration to ensure that we can do this together. Siduous Masi.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. With that, my colleagues and to the people of Guam, thank you, Senator Ron. You did it too. Thank you for coming. And you know, it's not a closing statement, but it's a statement saying that we will recess until a later date. It'll more than likely be after session, and I will communicate with the administration to provide so that we can get some financial response, and even from DRT and the other colleagues that are well familiar with the atrocity that happened in Guam, such as Senator Frank Blas. I'd ask him to attend so that he can give some comments about that, because he was also assisting and giving us the appropriate number that might be used. And with that, I will announce the next date, and then we'll move on. Senator Tello, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if you can also include an outreach, to the public again, really seeking the public input too as well. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, folks, this public hearing is recessed. At this time, it is 3:09. Please be safe. Wash your hands, wear your mask, keep your social distancing, and take care. Have a nice day. Thank you.